The scalding coffee hit my uniform before I even saw it coming. Are you incompetent or just stupid? The man's voice cut through the cafe's morning buzz like a knife through butter. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. And there I was, Lily Morgan, 23 years old, soaked in overpriced espresso, fighting back tears in front of 50 witnesses. I looked up at him, this man in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his steel-gray eyes cold as winter, his jaw clenched with a kind of fury that rich people reserved for those they considered beneath them. He didn't even see me as human. Just an obstacle. A mistake. Something to be corrected and forgotten. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me get you another. Another. He laughed, sharp and bitter. So you can spill that one too? Do you have any idea who I am? I didn't. And honestly, in that moment, standing in my coffee-stained uniform with my cheeks burning red and my heart hammering against my ribs, I didn't care. I apologize, sir, I repeated, keeping my voice steady even as my hands shook. It was an accident. An accident that ruined a $2,000 suit. He brushed at his jacket with disgust, as if my touch, or the coffee, had contaminated him. Get me your manager. Now. My name is Lily Morgan, and I've been invisible my entire life. Not literally invisible, of course. But invisible in the way that poor people are invisible to the rich. Invisible in the way that service workers are invisible to those they serve. Invisible in the way that a 23-year-old girl working 3 jobs to pay for her mother's medical bills becomes just another face in an endless sea of struggling humanity. I work at Sterling Cafe in downtown Manhattan, one of those upscale coffee shops where a latte costs more than I make in an hour. It's my morning job, 6 to noon, 5 days a week. In the afternoons, I clean offices for a janitorial company. At night, 3 times a week, I waitress at a diner in Queens. I sleep about 4 hours a night. I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. My phone has a cracked screen I can't afford to fix. But my mom has her medications, and that's all that matters. That particular Thursday morning started like any other. I arrived at Sterling Cafe at 5:45 a.m., tied my hair back into a neat ponytail, pinned on my name tag, and prepared for the morning rush. Our regulars came first, the lawyers and bankers and executives who needed their caffeine fix before heading to their high-rise offices. Then he walked in. I noticed him immediately, though I couldn't have told you why. Maybe it was the way he moved, with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Maybe it was the expensive watch that caught the morning light. Or maybe it was something else entirely, some instinct that told me this man was dangerous. He didn't wait in line. He walked straight to the counter, cutting in front of 3 other customers who were too intimidated to protest. Espresso. Double shot. Now. Not please. Not even a hint of courtesy. Just a command, delivered like I was a servant in his personal household. I'll have that right up for you, sir, I said with my best customer service smile, the one I'd practiced in the mirror until it looked genuine even when I wanted to scream. I made his espresso perfectly. 2 shots, exactly 90 seconds of extraction time, the crema rich and golden. I poured it into our finest cup and placed it on a small plate with a biscotti on the side. As I carried it to him, someone bumped into me from behind, another customer, not watching where they were going. The cup tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. The espresso splashed onto his jacket. And that's when the morning went from bad to nightmare. What's your name? He demanded, his eyes boring into mine. Lily, sir. Lily Morgan. His gaze dropped to my name tag, and something flickered across his face. Something I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Recognition? But it was gone so fast I thought I'd imagined it. Well, Lily Morgan, he said, drawing out my name like it was something distasteful, you've just cost me a very important meeting. I hope you're happy. I truly apologize, sir. Please, let me pay for the dry cleaning. With what? He looked me up and down, taking in my worn uniform, my sensible shoes with the worn heels, my lack of jewelry. Your minimum wage salary? Don't insult me. My manager, Patricia, rushed over. She was a nervous woman in her 50s who lived in terror of bad reviews and angry customers. Sir, I'm so terribly sorry. We'll comp your order, and please, allow us to cover your dry cleaning costs. Lily is one of our best employees. This was completely out of character. I don't care about free coffee, he interrupted. I want her fired. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Patricia's face went pale. Sir, surely we can find another solution. Fire her, or I'll make sure every person I know, and I know a lot of people, never sets foot in this establishment again. Your choice. I felt the blood drain from my face. I needed this job. Without it, I couldn't make rent. Couldn't pay for mom's medications. Couldn't survive. Please, I heard myself say, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Please, sir. I need this job. My mother is sick and Not my problem. He didn't even look at me. His attention was entirely on Patricia, waiting for her decision. I saw it happen in real time. Saw Patricia do the math in her head. One employee versus dozens of wealthy customers. The decision was obvious. Lily, she said softly, and I knew what was coming. I'm sorry. You're terminated, effective immediately. Please collect your things and leave. The walk home was the longest of my life. I took the subway from Manhattan to our tiny apartment in Queens, still wearing my coffee-stained uniform, my final paycheck clutched in my hand. $300. That was it. That was what I had to show for 2 years of loyal service. It wouldn't even cover next week's rent. I found my mother in her usual spot, the worn armchair by the window, an oxygen tank at her side, a book in her lap. She looked up when I came in, and her smile faded the moment she saw my face. Baby girl, what happened? I tried to hold it together. I really did. But the moment she asked, everything came pouring out. The coffee. The suit. The cruel gray eyes. The way he demanded my firing like I was nothing. Like I was less than nothing. Oh, Lily. Mom set her book aside and opened her arms, and I went to her like I was 5 years old again, crying into her shoulder while she stroked my hair. It's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. But I didn't see how. I was already stretched so thin. Losing even one job meant disaster. Who was he? Mom asked after my tears had slowed. This man who got you fired? I don't know. Some rich asshole in an expensive suit. I pulled back, wiping my eyes. Patricia called him Mr. Sterling when she was apologizing to him. My mother went very still. Sterling? Are you sure? Yeah, why? She was quiet for a long moment, her expression troubled. Lily. Sterling Cafe isn't just a name. It's owned by the Sterling family. They own half of Manhattan, real estate, tech companies, investment firms. They're one of the richest families in New York. My stomach dropped. You mean that cafe is his? If he's who I think he is, yes. Alexander Sterling. CEO of Sterling Industries. He took over the family business 5 years ago after his father retired. She paused. I saw him on the news once. They called him the Ice King of Wall Street. Ruthless. Brilliant. And completely merciless in business. I felt sick. I'd spilled coffee on one of the most powerful men in New York City. And he'd destroyed my life without a second thought. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. I'd already called my other employers. The janitorial company could give me more hours, but not enough. The diner was struggling. They couldn't afford to pay me more either. I needed another job. Fast. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop, a 5-year-old model that took 3 minutes to boot up. I scrolled through job listings, my heart sinking with each posting. Everything required experience I didn't have or education I couldn't afford. Then I saw it. Immediate opening, executive housekeeper. Sterling Manor, private estate. $3,500 per month plus room and board. Experience required in high-end household management. Sterling. That name again, following me like a curse. I should have closed the listing immediately. Should have looked for literally any other job. But $3,500 a month plus room and board? That was more than I made at all 3 of my jobs combined. With free housing, I could save money. Get ahead on mom's medical bills. Maybe even take an online class or 2. My cursor hovered over the apply button. This was insane. Alexander Sterling had gotten me fired. Why would his family hire me? And even if they did, why would I want to work for people like him? But then I thought about my mother, struggling to breathe, rationing her medications because they were too expensive. I thought about our overdue rent. Our empty refrigerator. The collection notices piling up on our kitchen table. I clicked apply. I didn't expect to hear back. But 2 days later my phone rang, an unknown number with a Manhattan area code. Is this Lily Morgan? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes, this is she. This is Victoria Chun, head of household staff for the Sterling family. We received your application for the executive housekeeper position. Are you still interested? I nearly dropped the phone.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Can you come for an interview tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'll text you the address.
I'll be there.
Thank you so much. After I hung up, I stared at my phone in disbelief. They wanted to interview me. The Sterling family, Alexander Sterling's family, wanted to interview me for a job. I should have been happy. Instead, I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. What were the odds that Alexander Sterling would be at this interview? And if he was, what were the odds he'd even remember the girl who'd spilled coffee on him? I told myself it didn't matter. I needed this job. Whatever it took, I would make it work. Sterling Manor wasn't in Manhattan. It was in the Hamptons, a sprawling estate overlooking the ocean, with manicured gardens and a circular driveway that could have fit 10 of my apartment buildings. I took the train and then a bus, arriving 20 minutes early because I couldn't afford to be late. A security guard checked my ID at the gate, then waved me through. I walked up the long driveway, my worn shoes clicking on the perfect pavement, feeling more out of place with every step. Victoria Chun met me at the front door. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She looked me over with sharp, assessing eyes.
Miss Morgan. Thank you for coming. Please follow me.
She led me through a marble foyer that echoed with my footsteps, down a hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking people who were probably Sterling ancestors, and into a small sitting room. Mrs. Sterling will join us shortly, Victoria said.
Can I get you water? Tea?
Water would be wonderful, thank you. She left, and I was alone with my thoughts and my nervousness. I smoothed down my only interview outfit, a blouse and skirt I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. I'd ironed them carefully that morning, but they still looked worn and shabby in this palace of wealth.
The door opened.
But it wasn't Mrs. Sterling who walked in.
It was him.
Alexander Sterling stood in the doorway, wearing casual clothes, dark jeans and a white button-down shirt, that somehow made him look even more intimidating than the suit had. His gray eyes locked onto mine, and I watched recognition dawn on his face.
You, he said flatly. I shot to my feet, my heart pounding. Mr. Sterling. I can explain. Explain what?
That you're the incompetent girl who ruined my Armani jacket? And now you're here, applying to work in my mother's home. He laughed, sharp and cold. This is rich.
Victoria.
Victoria appeared instantly, her expression concerned. Yes, Mr. Sterling. This interview is over.
Send her away.
Sir, your mother specifically requested. I don't care what my mother requested. This girl doesn't work here.
End of discussion.
He turned to leave, and I felt my last chance slipping away.
Please.
The word burst out of me, desperate and raw. Please, Mr. Sterling.
I need this job.
I know I made a mistake at the cafe, but I'm a hard worker, I'm reliable, He turned back, his expression carved from ice. Do you know how many people beg me for things every day?
Money. Jobs.
Favors. What makes you think you're special? I don't think I'm special. My voice shook, but I forced myself to meet his eyes. I think I'm desperate. My mother is dying. She has advanced pulmonary fibrosis. I work 3 jobs to pay for her medications, and I still can't keep up with the bills. I lost one of those jobs because of what happened at the cafe. So yes, I'm begging. Because I don't have any other choice. Something shifted in his expression. For just a moment, the ice cracked, and I saw something underneath.
Uncertainty? Guilt?
But then it was gone, frozen over again. That's not my problem, he said quietly. Victoria, show her out. Shocking secret revealed. As Victoria escorted me toward the front door, we passed an open study. I glanced inside, just a brief look, and froze. There on the wall was a photograph.
A family portrait.
And in that portrait, standing beside a younger Alexander Sterling and an elegant woman who must have been his mother, was another woman. A woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile.
A woman I knew. My mother.
Not as she was now, sick and frail and struggling to breathe. But as she'd been 25 years ago, young and healthy and beautiful.
Miss Morgan.
Victoria's voice seemed to come from very far away.
Are you all right? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe.
Couldn't process what I was seeing. Why was my mother in a photograph with the Sterling family? What connection could she possibly have to these people? And why had she never ever mentioned it? Miss Morgan, you're very pale. Perhaps you should sit down. Victoria's hand was on my elbow, steadying me, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from that photograph. My mother, young, radiant, wearing an elegant dress I'd never seen before, stood between a distinguished older man and the woman who had to be Mrs. Sterling. They weren't posed formally like strangers.
They looked close, familiar,
Like family.
Who is that?
I whispered, pointing at my mother's image with a trembling finger. The woman on the left? Victoria followed my gaze, and her expression shifted.
Surprise.
Then something else, caution, maybe, or concern. That was Charlotte. She worked here many years ago. Why do you ask? Because that's my mother. Because nothing in my entire life makes sense anymore. Because I think the Sterling family has been hiding something from me, or my mother has been hiding something from them. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I steadied myself, pulled my arm gently from Victoria's grasp, and said, "She looks kind." That's all. Victoria studied me for a long moment, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Miss Morgan, I think perhaps you should speak with Mrs. Sterling after all. Would you wait here, please?" She left before I could respond, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. I was alone with the photograph, with 1,000 questions screaming in my head, and with the growing certainty that my entire life had been built on lies. I'd asked my mother about my father exactly once. I was 7 years old, sitting at our tiny kitchen table, watching her make breakfast with a kind of careful economy that comes from never having enough. The other kids at school had been talking about their dads, what they did for work, where they went on vacation, what they looked like. "Mama," I'd asked, "where's my daddy?" Her hand had frozen mid-motion, the spatula hovering over the pan.
For a long moment, she didn't speak.
Then she'd set down the spatula, knelt in front of me, and taken my small hands in hers. "Your father was a good man," she'd said softly. "But he died before you were born. He would have loved you so much, baby girl." "What was his name?"
Thomas. Thomas Morgan.
"Do we have pictures?"
No, sweetheart.
"They were lost in a fire, a long time ago." I'd accepted that explanation because I was 7 and because my mother had never lied to me about anything else.
Thomas Morgan.
A good man who died too young. It was sad but simple, a closed chapter in our lives. Except now, standing in Sterling Manor, staring at a photograph of my mother looking happy and healthy in a life I'd never known existed, I wondered if anything she told me was true. Victoria returned with Mrs. Sterling herself. Eleanor Sterling was in her early 60s, elegant in the way that only old money could achieve, pearl earrings, a cashmere sweater set, perfectly styled silver hair. But it was her eyes that caught me. They were gray like her son's, but where his were cold, hers were warm. Kind. And the moment she saw me, really saw me, she went absolutely still.
"Oh my God," she whispered. "Charlotte." "No, ma'am. I'm Lily. Lily Morgan." But she wasn't listening. She'd moved closer, her hand reaching out to touch my face, then dropping away as if she'd thought better of it. "You look just like her. The same eyes. The same."
She stopped, pressing her hand to her chest.
"Victoria, get Alexander. Now."
"Mrs. Sterling, perhaps we should speak privately first."
"Get
Alexander." Victoria hurried off again, and I was left alone with this woman who was looking at me like I was a ghost. Or a miracle. I couldn't tell which. "Mrs. Sterling," I said carefully, "I think there's been some confusion. My mother's name is Charlotte Morgan, but—"
"Charlotte Morgan?"
Eleanor's eyes widened. Is she alive?"
"Yes."
"She's sick, but yes." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. 23 years. 23 years, and she never contacted us. Never told us. She looked at me again, really looked, and I saw understanding dawn across her face. "How old are you, Lily?" 23. "Your birthday?"
March 15th.
Eleanor made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Alexander's birthday is March 16th. You're exactly 1 day older than my son."
The world tilted sideways.
"I don't understand," I said, but that was a lie. I was beginning to understand perfectly, and the understanding was destroying everything I thought I knew about my life. Alexander burst into the room like a storm, his expression thunderous. "Mother," Victoria said it was urgent. He stopped when he saw me. "What is she still doing here?" "Alexander." Eleanor's voice was steady despite her tears. "I need you to look at this girl. Really look at her."
"I've seen enough. Look at her."
The command in her voice stopped him cold. I'd never heard a mother speak to her adult son that way, with such absolute authority. Alexander's jaw clenched, but he turned his full attention to me. I stood there, letting him examine me, feeling exposed and vulnerable under that cold gray gaze. I saw the moment he noticed it, the tilt of my chin, the shape of my nose, the color of my eyes. I saw confusion flash across his face, then denial, then something that looked almost like fear.
No, he said flatly.
Whatever you're thinking, no.
She's Charlotte's daughter, Eleanor said. Look at her, Alexander. She has the Harcourt eyes. Harcourt.
I interrupted. My mother's maiden name was Thompson. Eleanor shook her head slowly. Your mother's name was Charlotte Harcourt. She was my dearest friend. We met at boarding school when we were 15 years old. She was the maid of honor at my wedding. The godmother to my...
She paused, her voice breaking.
To my first child.
The room spun.
I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself.
That's impossible, I said.
My mother grew up in foster care. She told me she never knew her real parents. Your mother came from one of the oldest families in Boston, Eleanor said gently. The Harcourts were American aristocracy, old money, older name. Charlotte was set to inherit millions. Then why? I couldn't finish the question. Why did we live in a falling-apart apartment in Queens? Why did my mother clean houses for a living? Why did we struggle for every dollar, every meal, every breath? Alexander laughed, sharp and bitter.
Because she chose to leave.
She walked away from everything, her family, her inheritance, her life. She abandoned her responsibilities and disappeared without a trace. His gray eyes fixed on me. Is that what she told you? That she grew up in foster care? What other lies did she feed you? Alexander, that's enough, Eleanor said sharply.
Is it?
Because from where I'm standing, Charlotte Harcourt created an entire false identity, cut herself off from everyone who loved her, and spent 23 years hiding. And now her daughter shows up here, applying for a job, and you want me to believe it's a coincidence.
I didn't know.
The words burst out of me, loud and desperate. I didn't know any of this. My mother never told me about the Harcourts or the Sterlings or any of it. She told me she was alone in the world except for me. She told me my father was dead.
Your father?
Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Did she tell you his name?
Thomas Morgan.
She said he died before I was born. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander spoke first, his voice dangerously quiet.
Thomas Morgan. How convenient.
How very, very convenient. Alexander, Eleanor began, but he was already moving toward the door.
No.
I'm done with this. Whatever game she's playing, whatever scheme she's running, I want no part of it.
Victoria, show Miss Morgan out.
And make sure she never sets foot on this property again. He was gone before I could respond, the door slamming behind him with a finality that made me flinch. Shocking secret revealed. Eleanor sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 60-plus years. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Alexander is. He has reasons to be suspicious. Our family has dealt with many people over the years who wanted to exploit our connection to Charlotte. I'm not exploiting anything, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't even know there was a connection to exploit. Mrs. Sterling, please. I need to understand. Who was my mother?
Who were the Harcourts?
And why did she lie to me about all of it? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the pearls at her throat. Finally, she said, "Sit down, Lily. This is going to take a while."
I sat.
Charlotte Harcourt was my best friend from the time we were 15 until the day she disappeared, Eleanor began. We went to Miss Porter's together, came out in society together, even married around the same time. She married Richard Sterling, my husband, though we weren't in love. It was an arranged marriage, as was common in our circles.
But Charlotte
married for love. Who did she marry? His name was William Thorne. He was a professor at Columbia, brilliant, kind, completely wrong for Charlotte by her family's standards. He had no money, no connections, no pedigree. The Harcourts were furious. They threatened to disown her if she went through with the wedding.
But she did it anyway, I guessed.
Eleanor smiled sadly.
She did.
Charlotte was always the brave one. She married William in a small ceremony with just a handful of friends. Her family made good on their threat. They cut her off completely. No inheritance, no trust fund, not even her mother's jewelry. But Charlotte didn't care. She said she'd rather be poor with William than rich without him.
What happened to him? To William?
Eleanor's expression grew troubled. That's where the story gets complicated. Charlotte got pregnant almost immediately. This would have been about 9 months before you were born. She was over the moon. But then William. She paused, choosing her words carefully. William had an accident. He was walking home from the university late one night, and he was hit by a car.
A hit and run.
They never found the driver. My blood ran cold.
He died. No.
But he was in a coma for 3 months. And when he woke up, Eleanor's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He had severe brain damage. He couldn't walk, couldn't speak, couldn't even recognize Charlotte. The doctors said he'd need around-the-clock care for the rest of his life. I felt tears burning my eyes.
Oh God. My mother.
Charlotte was 6 months pregnant, completely alone, with a husband who needed constant medical care. The costs were astronomical. She came to me, and I helped as much as I could, but my husband.
Eleanor's mouth tightened.
Richard didn't approve. He said Charlotte had made her bed and should lie in it. He forbade me from giving her any more money. So she had nothing. She had nothing, Eleanor confirmed.
And then you were born. March 15th, 2002.
Charlotte called me from the hospital. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said she couldn't do it, couldn't raise a baby while caring for William, couldn't give you the life you deserved. She was talking about giving you up for adoption.
The world tilted again.
I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to process this. I went to the hospital, Eleanor continued. I held you in my arms, this perfect tiny baby with the Harcourt eyes. And I told Charlotte that I would help her. That she and William and you could come live here, at Sterling Manor. Richard could complain all he wanted, but this was my family home, and I wouldn't turn my back on my best friend.
But she didn't come. No. She disappeared.
Checked herself and you out of the hospital the next morning and vanished. I searched for her for years, Lily. Private investigators, police contacts, everything. But Charlotte Harcourt was gone, and in her place was someone named Charlotte Morgan who didn't exist before March 2002. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to hold myself together. What happened to William? He died 2 months after Charlotte disappeared. Without her there to advocate for him, the state facility where he'd been transferred. Well, let's just say they weren't equipped for his level of need. He developed pneumonia and passed away quietly. And my mother never knew.
I don't think so.
I tried to find her to tell her, but... Eleanor reached across and took my hand. Lily, I don't know why your mother ran. I don't know why she created a false identity or why she told you your father was someone named Thomas Morgan instead of William Thorne.
But I know Charlotte.
She was good and kind and brave. Whatever she did, she had a reason. I left Sterling Manor in a daze. Victoria arranged for a car service to drive me home, a kindness that would have seemed absurd that morning but now felt like a small gesture in a world that had been turned completely upside down. As the town car navigated the Long Island traffic, I stared out the window without seeing anything. My mother wasn't Charlotte Morgan. She was Charlotte Harcourt, from one of the richest families in Boston. My father wasn't Thomas Morgan. He was William Thorne, a professor who'd been brain damaged in what might not have been an accident. I wasn't just Lily Morgan, poor girl from Queens. I was Lily Thorne, daughter of American aristocracy, who should have grown up in wealth and privilege instead of poverty and struggle. And the Sterling family, particularly Eleanor Sterling, had been trying to help my mother for 23 years, only to be shut out and left wondering what had happened to their friend. By the time the car pulled up to my building in Queens, my shock had crystallized into something else, anger. My mother was in her chair by the window, exactly where I'd left her that morning. She looked up when I came in, and her smile faded when she saw my face.
Lily?
Baby, what's wrong? I dropped my purse on the floor and crossed my arms, standing in the middle of our shabby living room like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Who is Charlotte Harcourt? The color drained from my mother's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her hand went to her throat, and the book on her lap slid to the floor with a thud. What did you say?
Charlotte Harcourt.
I pronounced each syllable clearly, watching her face. That's your real name, isn't it?
Not Charlotte Thompson. Not Charlotte Morgan.
Charlotte Harcourt from Boston, from one of the richest families in America.
Lily, sit down. Let me explain. No.
The word came out louder than I'd intended, sharp with hurt and betrayal. You don't get to tell me what to do right now. You've been lying to me my entire life. About who you are, about who I am, about everything. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted you to find out this way. Did you want me to find out at all? Or were you planning to take your secrets to the grave and leave me wondering forever why nothing in my life ever made sense? That's not fair.
Fair.
I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've been working myself to death to pay for your medical bills when you come from money? Is it fair that I've been living in poverty when I have family, real family, the Harcourts, who could have helped us? Is it fair that you let me believe I was alone in the world when Eleanor Sterling has been looking for you for 23 years? At Eleanor's name, my mother let out a sob. You went to Sterling Manor. I applied for a job there. A job I needed because I got fired from Sterling Cafe. Do you know who fired me, Mom? Alexander Sterling.
Your best friend's son.
The man who might as well be I stopped, a new realization hitting me like a freight train.
Oh my God.
When was Alexander born?
Lily.
When was he born? My mother closed her eyes. March 16, 2002.
One day after me.
Eleanor had said it at the manor, but I'd been too overwhelmed to process what it meant. Now, standing in our living room with my whole life crumbling around me, I understood. You were both pregnant at the same time, I said slowly. You and Eleanor. You were best friends, pregnant together, going through it together. And then William had his accident, and you were scared and alone, and she offered to help you. She offered you a home. But you ran.
I had to run, my mother whispered. Why?
Why did you have to run from the one person who wanted to help you? My mother was crying openly now, tears streaming down her cheeks. Because it wasn't an accident. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning I didn't want to understand. What are you talking about?
William's accident.
The hit and run that put him in a coma. My mother's voice was barely audible.
It wasn't an accident, Lily. It was attempted murder.
And I knew exactly who did it.